I remember a few years ago, I was around the Mandara Mountains to do a story about some sisters who were doing some mission work in that area. And the conditions that I witnessed were quite, do I use the term inhuman in terms of availability of facilities and all of those things. So if I may ask, sir, how did you cope? I believe you were there with your wife.
Yes, absolutely.
And then maybe one or two children at that point in time.
Yeah.
How did you cope in that kind of scenario, knowing that you were working in a city and God had to ask you to relocate to a place that had barely little or no facilities? How was it? How did you cope?
Yeah, Jim, I have had that question many times and I find it very interesting. And I want to say this for anyone who cares to listen to very well. What I have learned 34 years from that time to this moment is wherever the will of God leads you, the grace of God keeps you. And that is the sum total. So if you ask, how did you survive? Yes, life was tough, but the joy of it all is that I survived because I was so sure in my heart that that was the place of God's will for me. The frontier areas. There were power encounters. There were moments of lack. There were moments of difficulties. But in the midst of them all, we see the grace of God at work. People were coming to the Lord, and kids were getting education. Women were being attended to in terms of health. Churches were being planted. You can say communities were being transformed positively. So that transformation inspired us and gave us, the strength to keep going on, even when you feel like giving up. But you just know, give up to what? To go do what? And so 34 years after, I can say to you that I am convinced that wherever the will of God takes you, God supply the needed grace to keep you in terms of your personal well-being, your welfare, the welfare of your family and your children. People ask, how did you send your children to school? We started a school for other kids in the village, and our children went to that school. And all my kids, 4 of them have finished university, even though they started from these remote areas. And so to tell you that God is faithful. And I think in a summarized form, this is all I can say in response to your question. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Listening to these stories is quite inspiring, in spite of the challenges, because from what I hear, your story can inspire other people who are contemplating on giving up that ambition that they have so that they can serve God's purpose wherever God sends them to go and work with Him. You have survived. So any other person too can survive it.
Absolutely.
Yes. So that's good. So now let's turn our attention for a while to the Journey Nigeria Leadership Development Program that you're doing in partnership with the Leadership Institute in California, United States, America. Some time ago, you sent me a video clip, I think, of the last program that you had. And I heard the story of a young lady who attended one of your programs. And it was quite inspiring, the things that she experienced there. So what is that project all about? And what do you hope to use it to achieve in specific terms?
Thank you, Jim. The Journey Leadership Development Program came as a result of a burden that I had, reading Matthew 9:35 to the end of that chapter. And that chapter talks about Jesus went to towns and villages, preaching, teaching, healing people. And then he saw the people in those towns and villages harassed, scattered, helpless. And he said they were like sheep without a shepherd. And shepherd speaks of leadership, caring leadership, effective leadership. And I discovered that when he saw that condition, he did not ask for money or cars or what have you. he asked the disciples to pray that the master of the harvest will send laborers, workers. So whether you call them laborers, managers, directors, missionaries, pastors, bank managers, wherever human beings are providing services of leadership, they were the kind of people Jesus asked so that they can bring transformation to society, starting with the heart of people. And so when God opened my eyes to see that leadership is very critical, everything stands or falls with the kind of leadership that you put in place. Our country is suffering. It's not because we don't have what it takes to be a great country, but we are suffering because we don't have the kind of leadership that has the willpower or that is committed to following the kind of principles that will bring transformation. And so when I was in the United States doing a doctorate program, I came across the Leadership Institute. It was founded by Dr. Paul Johnson, who is still a professor in Fuller Theological Seminary, and the late Dr. Chuck Miller, who was my mentor. And through that, and I saw the kind of emphasis that they were pursuing to build the health and capacity of leaders just connected with what I was thinking about. And so I returned to Nigeria and felt this is what we should be doing. And so the journey is about developing leaders who will lead from a place of the kind of capacity, spiritual and holistic capacity to bring transformation, not in the conventional way of mission work, but we want to multiply workers on every platform, among politicians, among military generals, among business people, university professors, secondary schools. And so the journey has attracted people from all these areas of life, and they have learned certain principles, beginning with their inner journey before their outer journey. Now, these are terms that we use in the journey program, meaning that if you cannot be developed from the inside. True development begins not with building roads and building, but with building people. And building people starts from their heart, from the inside, before you build their outside. So, but what other leadership programs have done, they've concentrated on building the outside of people and how they can handle infrastructures, but they have left the most important part, how to build a man from the inside out in a very practical way rather than just being theoretical. And so for 13 years since we began holding the journey in Nigeria, it's been very transformational, I must tell you. Next week, we'll be with about 35 people in another retreat. It's usually in retreat form, 3 days, a quarter or a term, and then another 3 days. But no retreat is the same. One retreat built on another retreat, and it speaks to different aspects of your inner life before it talks about how you can handle your outer life. And your outer life is a reference to what you do and where you do it. The jobs that we do is not just to give us money and the good things of life. Jobs they are a gift from God to bring transformation and bring Him glory. But people have to learn how to do that. The other thing we talk about is you can do leadership from a place of rest. And here is the final thing that sums it up all. We are teaching people how to lead from the overflow of their lives. For something to overflow, it means it's filling from the inside, and then it brings the overflow. Now, that is what is lacking. That's one. So the program centered around 3 priorities. Abiding, which speaks about your relationship with God. Loving one another, which speaks about your relationship with people. Bearing witness, which speaks about productivity that brings transformation. And people have said, you cannot explain the journey, you can only experience it.
Wow.
So that's just it.
Wow.
And so for us, that helps to multiply workforce in the mission field. So you're not just talking of mission as somebody traveling here or there only, but you're also talking about everybody seeing himself or herself a missionary through the vocation that God has given to him.
Wow, this is interesting. Thank you so much for this insight, because what you have explained to us gives us another perspective to missions. Because there's a tendency to have this narrow view of missions as having to leave your culture and go to another culture and live in a rural setting and all of those things. But this brings a completely new perspective to what missions is all about. And I think that is something we need in our current context. Thank you for joining us in today's episode of VerityTalks. Please don't forget to like, comment, and share this video. See you again on the next episode of VerityTalks. Thank you and God bless.